Aisha stood in her tiny apartment kitchen at 2:17 in the morning, staring at a text message she had already read 30 times. The relationship was over. Not taking a break, not needing space. Over, finished, done. The kind of ending that leaves a strange silence behind it. The kind that makes you walk from room to room because sitting still feels impossible. She opened the fridge, closed it, checked her phone, put it down, picked it back up, opened the text again, as if reading it one more time would somehow produce a different ending. It didn't. Nothing changed. The apartment was still quiet. The message still hurt. The future she had imagined still no longer existed. And sometime around 3 in the morning, she whispered the prayer people pray when they have run out of impressive prayers. God, now what? No lightning, no voice from heaven, no immediate answer, just silence. At least that's what she thought, because most of us don't realize we're standing in a garden until much later. Mary Magdalene probably felt something similar. Not the breakup, the confusion, the disorientation, the feeling that the story you were building your life around has suddenly collapsed. Friday had happened. Jesus was dead. The tomb had been sealed. The disciples were hiding. Everything she believed was possible seemed buried behind a stone. And yet, before dawn, she got up and went anyway. I love that detail because faith is not always certainty. Sometimes faith is simply showing up. Sometimes faith looks like getting out of bed when you have no answers. Sometimes faith looks like walking toward a tomb while carrying more questions than hope. John tells us she arrived while it was still dark. Not after sunrise, not when things became clear. While it was still dark. That detail matters because darkness is one of John's favorite symbols. He's not just talking about the sky. He's talking about Mary's heart. The darkness around her matched the darkness inside her. And if we're honest, most of us know exactly what that feels like. The season where God seems silent. The season where prayers feel unanswered. The season where all you can see is the stone. But here's where the story becomes beautiful. Mary thought she was walking toward an ending. God knew she was walking toward a beginning. And isn't that always the tension? We call it a grave. God calls it a garden. The Bible begins in a garden. That isn't accidental. Genesis tells us God planted Eden and placed humanity inside it. Think about that. The first environment God designed for people wasn't a city. It wasn't a palace. It wasn't a cathedral. It was a place designed for growth, a place where things were cultivated, a place where life could flourish. Every tree, every river, every living thing, carefully tended, carefully planted, carefully loved, and every evening God walked there with humanity. No shame, no fear, no hiding, just relationship. That was the original design. Before religion, before sacrifice, before rules, before shame, there was a garden and there was God, and there were people walking together. Then came the fracture, and notice where it happened. Not in a battlefield, not in a throne room, not in a city, in a garden. The first thing sin damaged wasn't behavior, it was intimacy. A relationship was broken in a garden. The first thing humanity lost wasn't power, it was closeness, which means redemption would eventually have to come through one too. Fast forward thousands of years. Another garden, Gethsemane, the night before the crucifixion. And this garden feels nothing like Eden. The air is heavy. The disciples are exhausted. The future is closing in. Jesus walks deeper into the darkness and falls to the ground. The name Gethsemane literally means oil press, the place where olives are crushed. And honestly, that feels fitting because Jesus is being crushed. Luke records that his sweat became like drops of blood, a condition modern medicine calls hematidrosis, rare, documented, usually associated with extreme psychological distress. This wasn't symbolic suffering, this was real. His heart was breaking before the nails ever touched his hands. And then he prays the prayer that changes everything. Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. And then three words that repaired what was broken in Eden. Not my will. The first Adam reached for control in a garden. The second Adam surrendered control in a garden. One brought death, the other made resurrection possible. Because every resurrection begins with surrender. Every single one. Aisha didn't know that. Not standing in her kitchen, not staring at her phone, not crying over a future that had collapsed. She thought she had lost something, and she had. But what she didn't know was that God was preparing space for something she hadn't imagined yet. That's what surrender feels like. It rarely feels noble. It usually feels like loss. It feels like letting go of the thing you desperately wanted to keep. It feels like standing empty-handed while heaven remains silent. Gethsemane always feels like loss before it feels like victory. Then comes the third garden, the burial garden. John quietly tells us something most people miss. There was a garden, and in the garden, a new tomb. A garden. Again, the geography is preaching. Eden, Gethsemane, now the tomb. The gardener is buried in his own garden. Life enters death. Hope enters silence. The Creator enters the grave. And for an entire Sabbath, heaven says nothing. Can you imagine it? The disciples are grieving. Mary is grieving. The world continues spinning. People buy bread. Children play in the streets. The sun rises, the sun sets, and somewhere in a garden, hope appears buried. But gardens are strange places because things buried in gardens do not stay buried. Seeds go into the ground looking dead. Then life appears. The resurrection was hidden inside the burial all along. Which brings us back to Mary, back to the darkness, back to the tears, back to the empty tomb. She sees angels. She sees a man standing nearby, and she mistakes him for the gardener. Honestly, I think John smiles when he writes that line, because she wasn't wrong. Not really. The Greek word is Kēpouros, keeper of the garden, one who tends what grows, and if you zoom out far enough, that's exactly who Jesus is. He is the gardener of Eden, the gardener of Gethsemane, the gardener of the resurrection morning, the one who specializes in bringing life out of dead places, the one who plants hope where despair used to grow, the one who takes broken things and patiently tends them until they bloom again. Mary wasn't wrong. She just didn't realize how right she was. Then Jesus says one word, Mary. That's it. Not a sermon, not a theological argument, not evidence, her name. Because sometimes God doesn't answer your questions first. He restores your identity first. And the moment she hears her name, everything changes. Because nobody said her name like Jesus. Nobody. The sound she thought she had lost forever was suddenly standing right in front of her, alive. And in that moment, she discovers something beautiful. She came looking for a body. She found a resurrection. Maybe that's why I keep thinking about Aisha. Because 6 months later, she would say something strange. She would say, I thought that season was destroying my life. Then she'd laugh. And now I realize it was rebuilding it. New friends, new purpose, a deeper faith, a healthier future, things she couldn't see while standing in the middle of the loss. Because that's the thing about gardens. Nothing looks alive at first. Growth happens underground long before it appears above the surface. Maybe that's where you are right now. Maybe you're standing in your own garden. Maybe it looks more like Gethsemane than Eden. Maybe something has ended. Maybe a dream has been buried. Maybe you're staring at a stone that refuses to move. Maybe you're showing up every morning carrying questions God hasn't answered yet. Keep coming. Mary kept coming. Keep showing up. Mary kept showing up. Because resurrection has a habit of meeting people who refuse to stop coming. And if scripture teaches us anything, it's this. The gardener is usually working long before you recognize him, especially in the dark, especially before dawn, especially in gardens, because every resurrection begins with a surrender, and every surrender becomes the soil where new life grows. Every story is evidence. If something in this story stayed with you and if it's still sitting somewhere in your chest, that's not an accident. That's the thing we don't scroll past. Hit like, not as a reflex, but as a marker, because somewhere out there, a witness is still looking for proof that their story isn't over. And this might be how they find it. Pass it to that friend, the one whose testimony is still being written, the one who hasn't heard the scripture told this way before. And subscribe to Bible Rebooted. We don't come here to perform. We come here to tell the truth and to hand you the evidence that you were never as far gone as it felt. Every story is evidence. It's your boy Kairos Ade signing out. Like, subscribe and stream the music.